Hello and good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. I love doing these on Friday. I feel like it's a good wrap up to the week. I am here with Mary Margaret. Mary Margaret has been a member of our communities for a very long time, maybe since the beginning, I would say,
I think so.
um, and is also a neighbor of mine, kind of. In the same, when you live in the country, anyone who lives within like 10 to 20 miles of you is your neighbor. So that would be,
Agreed.
yeah. Mary Margaret, welcome to the Let's Talk Clutter show. How is your Friday going?
It's going just peachy. Peachy. I'm excited to be here. This is a first for me.
It is. It can be a little intimidating doing these live videos, and so I wanted to just say, like, to you and anyone else who has volunteered to do this, really, like, kudos, because it totally is outside of a normal human's comfort zone to just be on the internet talking about clutter. So
Well, so that explains why I have sweaty palms. Is that what
yes,
you're telling me?
yes. But you're doing it, and I think this is part of the decluttering process, like getting outside of your comfort zone. When we have clutter and we see all the stuff around us all the time, like that's our comfort zone. It might not be comfortable, but it is our comfort zone. And so I love this strategy for decluttering. Kind of try something else.
Absolutely. And it also helps to know, because I have been here for so long, that it's a completely safe environment, and I don't need to be nervous, but I'm human, so I am nervous.
Well, Mary Margaret, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey with clutter?
Okay. So I have three children who are, adults and older teens now. Um, but when they were little, I worked from home. I had my own business. And I think the reason clutter really started for me was because I was in that I forget the name for it, the mindset where you don't have enough, scarcity mindset.
Scarcity mindset. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So my business, trying to run a business when you have young children is just it's ridiculous. So I was always feeling torn in every direction, and was not making enough money to really make my business be profitable. But I really needed the connection to people outside of like the little people I was with all the time.
There's a lot more to business than profit.
Yeah,
Only
no
the first
kidding.
one to tell you that.
No kidding. Um, so I think that scarcity mindset, if someone was willing to offer my kids hand me down clothes or hand me down toys, or I felt kind of guilty taking time away from my children to do my business. And felt guilty taking time away from my business to be with my children. So when people were offering things, I would take it. And my attic shows that. um, and so it got to the point where, they had so much stuff and they didn't value anything because they didn't want it. It was me giving it to them because they felt guilt, or I felt guilty. Um, so then when I did find you, and honestly, I do not remember how I found you. I thought it was through my cousin, and I talked to her and she's like, I've never heard of her. So anyway, when
I
I
think we
found
have like
you,
we have overlapping circles, and I think, but our
yeah,
kids are enough apart in age that they weren't little at the same exact time. So it makes total sense to me that you don't know how you found me, because I think you were doing story hours or something. Like, I feel like there was just like overlapping circles.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And like you said, we're neighbors because we're like 10 miles apart. So, fast forward to a few years ago, I think I saw you right before the pandemic exploded. And I was already, we had torn our house down It's a 200-year-old farmhouse, but not the one you're thinking of in your mind. It was just, little rooms added as they needed more space. So we tore everything down except for the timber frame and lived in a tent for 3 months with 3 children. Ooh, that was fun. And then when we were bringing stuff back into the house, it was really obvious to me, like, oh my God, we do not need this stuff. This is just junk. So I started to get into the mode of just getting rid of things. And then I found you. And it was like, for a long time, I just listened. I just watched and I listened. And it's like I needed time for that all to sink into my brain. And I think it's just in the last year to year and a half that I have just, I got it. I just got it finally. And when I look around my house, there's still clutter. There's still, the pile of papers on the bar in the kitchen, and, mail comes in and sits there, and people kick off their shoes and they're right at the door. So there's still problem areas. And I think there always will be
There always
because,
will be. Come to
right,
my
I've
house
got five
if
people
you
or
want to
four
see
people
that
living here.
in action also.
Exactly. So there are problem areas, but there are so many places that as I look around, I'm like, I remember I could never find a pair of scissors. Well, I know where the scissors are now. That's a silly example, but that's
No,
how
it's
it is.
this is real life. I mean, if you can find your scissors in like 10 seconds, that is a
Yeah,
massive win.
exactly. And funny story, when baby, my youngest, she's 14, when she was cleaning out her room, we found 9 pair of scissors. I was like, do you have something to tell me, honey? Is there a problem here?
It's amazing. I had a similar situation with tape when I like
Yes.
cluttered my house. I had more tape. I have now like where we've gone through that, but it was like a 10-year supply of tape, like for real. I mean,
Yeah,
every time
every
I need to grab
Christmas
something, yeah, just get more tape, get a three
I
pack.
get like the 6 pack.
Yes.
And I've still got 5 left over from last year. So
Mhm. Mhm. Wrapping
I
paper
did
too.
not do that this year.
Yes. Yes, it's a change of mindset. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah.
MaryMargaret,
So
it's funny. I'm laughing at the fact that you just listened for a while, which I think is a really good thing to do. But I'm laughing because I recently got an email from somebody who it was a very critical email and it said, all you do is tell people to declutter and live within their space. And that is just not realistic.
then what is?
Like, that was my response. I wrote back, I was like, thank you for your opinion. Do you have a better suggestion?
Yeah, there you go.
But it
And now
does
it's
take a while to like that has to sink in for a long time. It is not a comfortable thought, right? Like it's you kind of have to hear it and think about it and witness it and
and I don't know why it took me so, I mean, I was doing, you would give a challenge. I remember the first thing I worked on. I have this cabinet right as you come in our back door, which is really our front door. And that cabinet has 8 cubbies in it. And basically, the junk drawer everybody has? It was the junk, like, cubbies. There were 8 of them. You never knew what was in any one of those cubbies. And I just dumped it all out on the floor, which basically was as you walk in the door, now you're climbing over, 8 cubbies of junk. And I just put all the pencils in a jar, and I put all the pairs of scissors because that's the kind of stuff that was in there. Paper clips and pens, and I found, like, oh, you know what we need at the back door? We need the sunscreen and the bug spray, because when we go outside, that's like what we need to grab. And I like started putting together, like, oh, I need to make this work for me. So I very clearly remember that being the first space that I worked on. And I got garbage bag, like full garbage bags full of, excuse my language, but crap that needed to get
yeah.
out of the house. I was like, why am I holding garbage in our home? That.
This is a huge light bulb moment though. I mean, so much of the stuff that we do have in our homes is actual trash.
Oh,
And we feel so guilty about throwing away trash, which is like an idea that's been sold to us by big corporations that don't want to be responsible for all of the trash that they create. So they're like, hey, consumer, you're a good person if you don't throw away anything ever, right? And
Right.
then we're like, oh, I'm a bad person if I throw stuff away. But the reality is, what else are you going to do with garbage? I
Right.
mean,
Right. Yeah. And I'm, I've got a few strikes against me. I was a preschool teacher. We collect everything.
you do.
I'm a creative. I enjoy making things. Not that I've ever really made things out of trash, but it's that collect kind of mindset. Um, and I do. I feel guilty. I remember finding a bag or something of corks, like wine corks, and I like deliberated over this thing. I'm like, I could make a cork board, but I don't have time to make a cork board. Well, I could make this. Oh, but I don't have time. And it was just this. I probably spent a good hour thinking about this bag of corks. Finally, I was like, goodbye.
Right. Right. Like I am not devoting any more of my mental energy to you. And it's no wonder that we're so exhausted every day because we spend so much time on decisions like this.
Yeah.
And there's nothing, I mean, I say that with so much love. There is nothing crazy about that because this is how we are raised and how we are living in this society today is that we are devoting hours thinking about garbage.
But I think that's kind of what you're teaching is, you know, it's not worth my time if I really sat down and said, you know what, today I'm going to make a cork board. I could totally put on Facebook Marketplace, hey, got some corks. And I'm sure people have bags of corks that are filling up their house, you
Actually,
know?
someone in the comments here, it just says Facebook user, but someone says, I still have my bag of corks.
See, we
Oh,
should get
yeah.
together and make a cork board.
That is the funny thing about this world today is that your trash and everyone else's trash is basically the same also. Like whatever you have in your house, everyone else has a house full of that also. And that was like one of my big aha moments when I was working in people's homes. I'm like, oh my God, it's the same collections absolutely everywhere. Like everyone has this, everyone has that, everyone has this other thing. Like we all have the same stuff and giant collections of it.
Yeah.
So there's no risk of not being able to get what you need when you need it because our homes are literally filled to the brim with all the same stuff.
And the thing is, too, like, I justified holding on to it because I do have the space. I am so ridiculously fortunate to have, maybe I'm not fortunate, to have a huge home with lots of storage space. We built this house with an addition, and we have, a huge attic. And the plan was to, make that a very usable storage space. It's a dumping ground now.
Mhm.
And so, eventually, and I have worked up there, but it ends up kind of happening again.
I've seen you working in the attic.
Yes, so many times. But I have the space to hold on to these things. And so that kind of is that guilt too, is like, well, if I throw it out, then why do I have this space to hold on to things if I'm just going to throw it in the landfill? So there is that guilt there. Um,
Have you grappled with like have you found a mindset to kind of take over that one yet to replace that one?
I think when I go up into the attic and I see the plethora of crafting supplies that I do have, I think that really helps me to realize, like, yeah, you don't need corks. Like, look at what you do have. You have, so many things that are ready made for you to work on. But honestly, the only time I ever get a chance to work on my crafts that I enjoy is when I go away once or twice a year to my, crafters girls weekend. Um, and the reason is I don't have a space to work. And so it all gets shoved up into the attic, and it's a pain in the tush to bring it down from the attic. So I just don't. until I'm going away for 4 days and I have to bring something with me. And then I go through that effort. So I think my scarcity mindset has really, I've let go of that. I that I had when, the kids were little. Um, I really think about now when someone says, "Oh, I've got, some shoes that, maybe baby would like." I'm like, "You know what? She's good. Thank you so much." You know,
I mean,
although
our
she
also get to the point where they don't want hand-me-downs. They want exactly what they want. Like, it works great when they're younger and you can just pass the cooling down, and all of a sudden they have an
right.
opinion and they're like, "No, I'm not wearing this." I'm like, "What? This is like a beautiful, expensive, like, what do you mean you're not wearing this? You're wearing it." And you're like, "Actually, I get it. You have to be an individual, blah, 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 blah."
Yeah, right. Well, I can say now that my oldest is 21, I can say that eventually when they're buying their own things and paying rent and car insurance and all that, they're like, "Oh, you're getting rid of that? Can I have that?"
Nice. It
They
comes full
suddenly like
circle.
my stuff.
I like, this idea that, so I'm gonna like circle back here for a second. When we build homes or create homes, we always are focusing on storage. How would it be different if we focused on function instead of storage? Wouldn't that make so much more sense?
It would, but I feel like when we were designing the house, I didn't know what would function,
Right, right. That is
which
a really good point.
it like our kitchen right now is still very much very much not done, and we have switched that kitchen around to make it more functional so many times that I'm like, I am so glad we didn't put, because kitchens are expensive.
Kitchens are
I
very
am
expensive.
so glad I didn't put so much money into that just to be disappointed. So I think there's a process that you have to go through in order to figure out what functions for you.
Yeah,
Um,
I totally agree with that. It's hard to, we are not taught function ever.
no,
Another thing we should be teaching kids in school.
yeah, no kidding, no kidding.
It takes a lot of observation to understand function, and then
And
just
who
when
has
you get
time
it,
for that,
right? I know.
right?
We have all this stuff we have to take care of. Who has time to think about function?
Right, right. You just kind of like run through your days. And I feel like now suddenly I have the time to say, why do I have the silverware over there when really we set the table and we empty the dishwasher right here? So this is where the silverware should be. Like that's functional. And if I just, you don't have time to do that when you're trying to keep up with everything. But you
Yeah.
really like, that's also a misnomer because you really do have the time, because all the time that I would spend running back and forth to the silverware, it took, 15 minutes to put the silverware where it should be.
We just don't prioritize thinking about it. We don't, I don't know that we don't prioritize it. We don't even know to think. I'm not sure what it is, but we don't, it's not part of our everyday to like look at a system and say, "Hey, this isn't working. What could I make? What could I do to make this work better?"
But we do it at work, right?
Hmm.
You're at work for 8 hours and you work to make your space functional so that you can be productive and all of those things. Yet you come home and
Yeah, I mean, as a preschool teacher, you probably had zones for everything, and
absolutely.
it was like optimized for like children's brain development and all this stuff. And then you come into your house and you're like, done, done.
Or you try to implement it, and what you think is going to be functional, your kids are like, yeah, no.
I will say, I think that the kitchen is the hardest room to make functional. And the one of the reasons I think that is we tend to switch our diets pretty frequently and switch what we purchase pretty like frequently. So, maybe one day we're shopping at Hannaford, our local grocery store, and getting like something in a normal size container, but then we go to a bulk food like a Costco or something, and then we get a giant thing, and then all of a sudden like there's no storage for that because we switch up what we bring into the kitchen a lot. We shift our diets, so we eat differently a lot. And our family grows and changes, and it all kind of centers around the kitchen. And then there are times where you need a lot of stuff in the kitchen for like holidays, but that's not every day. But you're like, oh, but what about for the holidays? So I think the kitchen is really tricky. I like it's one of the most difficult spots to
And
figure out function.
the way our house is laid out, the kitchen, when you walk in, you come in like a little hall that's like a back hall, we call it. And then you come into the kitchen. And the kitchen has, like, that is our entertainment space.
It's the hub.
People rarely go into our living room. You know,
Mhm.
our kitchen is our home. And I think that's just, I don't know if that's normal for most people, but it's a big, wide open kitchen.
Yeah, I think that
And
most people spend a lot of time in their kitchens entertaining. If you're
yeah,
here in the comments, let us know, what are you doing in your kitchen? Is it the hub? Do you entertain? Do you eat? Do you what else happens? Or do you actually use your living room?
yeah, yeah. It's just, it's odd to me because when I go like to my parents, you wouldn't hang out in the kitchen. You go in the living room. Like that's where they entertain. So it is interesting that just because of the layout, or maybe it's because of who we are, you know, we enjoy eating and
We
cooking.
actually, when we renovated our house, we intended on having an eat-in kitchen, and the spot where the table was going to go, we put a couch there during the renovation, and everyone loved the couch there. So now we have a living room in our kitchen, which makes way more sense because we entertain in the kitchen only. Like,
There you go. Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Nancy says kitchen is for entertaining in her house also.
Do you
Yeah.
like to cook, Nancy? Because I think that has something to do with it. If that's your mode of entertaining, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Putting out food, cooking, like preparing, like, and who wants to be alone in the kitchen? That was always,
Right.
I struggled with that so much when I had a tiny kitchen. I never wanted to be alone in there when we had people over because then I couldn't see the people who were, so everyone was cramped into this little tiny kitchen. It was horrible.
Yeah.
Um,
Speaking of kitchen, that was another space that was just a total transformation. And I think it's really interesting because I had so many pots and pans that I hated, and I had like a few that I loved. So which ones did I use when I cook every single day? But I
the
would
food that you
like we
loved.
right?
Yeah.
So we had this big huge cabinet to keep all of our cookware, and I was constantly digging through them to find the cover for this or find the bottom for that cover, blah blah blah. Finally I was like, this is stupid. Like, why am I digging through the other ones? And again, I feel like that's that scarcity mindset. Like, I have to have all of these pans because you never know when I
You
might
never
have to cook
know.
75 things at the same exact time. So I just ditched all the ones I couldn't stand. And my husband was like going through, he's like, what are you getting rid of that for? "Oh, it works perfectly fine." I said, I hate it. And you don't cook. So I get to choose.
Yes, absolutely.
And now
Empowerment.
everything in the kitchen has its own place. The cover is with the pan, which takes up way more space, but you know what? I'm not digging for the covers anymore. So it's functional,
It's
you
functional.
know?
Yeah.
That was a big
Mary
mindset
Margaret,
change.
I am curious, how do you define clutter today?
Well, I do like your definition that it's the things in your life, not just physical things, but everything that impedes progress or impedes movement.
I'm
I
gonna go
do
with that definition too.
I do think of that as I'm, walking through my house. And I think that also speaks to functionality. I am walking and I see everybody's shoes are all over at the back door. I'm like, okay, well, why do they feel the reason or the motivation to just kick them off when the shoe shelf is literally one more step? Well, it's because this cabinet is kind of making that space a little more narrow. Okay, well, that cabinet holds winter clothes, so we'll get rid of that, and then it'll be easier to get in there. So those kinds of things, the cabinet was impeding progress or motion. So I do like that definition. It really, I think of that. Your little voices in all of our heads.
And that's what I hear a lot. Sorry.
Don't be sorry. I need that voice.
Um, and like I love the literal, like this is literally in the way. Like this thing is like literally impeding forward momentum because it's actually in the way.
Right.
Yeah.
But, and I know what you're going to say next, it's also these things that are in the way.
Yeah.
And I am a number one, a procrastinator. I am so good at procrastinating. I could teach millions of lessons someday later on procrastination. So this year, when you were talking about like what's the word you want to use for the year, I was always wanted to do that, but I never actually did because I'm a procrastinator. And this year I was like, no, I'm gonna do it. And I spent like a good week trying to figure out like what word is gonna stick with me for an entire year. Like nothing ever sticks with me for that long. And then I realized like you just need to start. And I was like, oh my goodness, start. What a great word for a procrastinator, right? And
It's
that
perfect.
really has helped me. It has helped me so much that I'm like, why didn't I pick a good word years ago? Like anytime I feel that little procrastination inkling, I'm like, oh no, you have to start. It doesn't matter what you start, you have to start. So
I love MaryMargaret that you put your breakfast picture into our prioritize your sanity group every morning because you're off to a good start. And I like that whole concept. Like, I mean, I'm going to say the word start like 15 times now. Like the way you
right.
start your day really sets you up for success. And so if you don't even start with something like for you, you need to eat breakfast. That's like your right. Like that's the whole idea behind this. And if you don't start that way, it's going to kind of all domino effect in a negative way. And I just, I love seeing that every day.
Thank you, because I kind of feel like who the heck wants to see my breakfast every morning? But it's really it's the accountability, and this speaks to our community. Um, it's the accountability that there are days where I'm like, you know what, I don't have time for breakfast. I don't feel like eating, blah, blah, and I make up 100 excuses in my mind why I don't need to start my day with a good breakfast. And I'm like, no, actually, you really do. And so having the accountability that I know when I post that, someone is going to respond in a positive way. And that feels good, and it feels good to think other people are being, inspired by that or helped by that or whatever. So the accountability and the community that surrounds me in that is so helpful. So
Yeah.
helpful.
The accountability, just posting something, even if nobody actually sees it, you feel like somebody's seeing it, right? Like public accountability has been a great strategy for me too.
Yes. And I think you would appreciate this too, because you worked from home for so long. You it, you need to build accountability when you have your own business or you're a stay-at-home mom. Or, I mean, probably everybody does. But I think those are my experiences being, having my own business and being a stay-at-home mom. I didn't necessarily have accountability other than myself, and that's
Oh
not
yeah,
so
I'm
great.
terrible at accountability for myself. It is like a total like disaster. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
Because you can put it off.
you can put it off and there's no real consequence to putting things off except that you're hurting yourself, right? But like
Right.
when you own your own business, when you're a stay-at-home, really like when you're only accountable to yourself, I mean,
Yeah.
you can put a lot of things off. You can wake up late, you can like be lax about meals, you can not go for a walk, you cannot do the thing you're supposed to do. And the consequence is minor in the moment. Over time, it's significant, right? Then you wake up in the middle of the night panicking, like, oh, I haven't done this. Like, I really need to get this done. But yeah, public accountability, massively, massively impactful.
Absolutely.
Mary Margaret, so we're talking to a pretty wide audience here. Will you just share the program that you're in and how, like, prioritize your sanity, and how, like, what your perspective is about that program?
Absolutely. So I belong to Prioritize Your Sanity. Um, that has our wonderful Amber as the coordinator. And it is such a, it's like the most positive place on the internet. It just is. I don't know how many members there are, but
I think
I
there's
have,
about 220 maybe right now, something like that.
so, I've only encountered one negative comment in the 3 years that I've been a part of it. And it wasn't even really negative. It was more like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But anyway, it is a fantastic program where, I get that accountability, I get that community for very little input as far as I'm concerned. I can get as much out of it or as little out of it as I choose. Um, Once a week we have a hour-long coaching session, which is just great to kind of get to know the people that are in that community and get like real time answers to questions, or problems, or share, part of your experience. And then we also do two marathons, which, holy cow, those are so awesome.
I'm
Uh,
surprised at how awesome they are. Actually, as like when we started the marathons, I didn't think they were going to be like take off like they have. They are so incredible.
it's that accountability. It's I am making an appointment that I am going to keep because I love the community that I'm a part of. And I know that at the end of that marathon, I am going to feel so good about what I've accomplished. Even if, I could have accomplished that on my own, but if I'm not accountable, then, I'm not going to do it. But setting up the appointment on, April 7th, I'm going to show up for 4 hours. That's fantastic. So I get a lot out of those.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people do. I love how they have kind of evolved to be what they are today. You
Yeah.
think 4 hours is a long time to declutter, but it goes by so quickly when you're on those calls and you get so much done. I mean, I see the before and after pictures and I am blown away.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
they're just really effective.
And what's also nice is there's different coaches doing those. And, even though they all have basically the same, storyline of this is how we declutter, they bring their own personality into it. And you get different things from different people, even if they're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
So I appreciate having, lots of different point of views. And then also there's the boot camps, which are really fun because maybe fun isn't the right word. They are, but they're they're really good because you revisit very basic lessons. And I have been doing boot camps for 3 years. Not everyone because of my schedule, but a great deal of them. And the lessons, I've gotten so much more out of them on repeat. So if I can listen to that lesson one day and then, a month later I listen to it and I'm like, oh, I never thought of it that way. It's the same words. I don't know why
I
it
know.
changes.
'Cause you're ready to hear different things at different points. And like just even stop the flow in, increase the flow out. That means different things the further you go along in this process. Because maybe, the fifth time you do this, stop the flow in means I'm going to eat down my pantry, but you never even considered eating down your pantry the first couple of ones because you were so focused on actually the clutter. I
Yeah.
think Marie, one of our coaches, it was so funny because in the beginning of um, most of our boot camps, our old ones anyway, I had always said, if you're interested in becoming a professional organizer, let me know. And Marie said she never heard that line, even though it was like the same slides, the same recording, the same everything. She never heard that until one day when she was like, I wonder if I could coach, like if I could be a professional organizer. Like she had never heard that in the, like she just, because it wasn't relevant to her at the
Yeah.
time, right?
Relevancy. That's a great way to say it. You have such a fantastic command of language because you always sound so put together. I just have to say that.
I don't feel that way, so I really appreciate that compliment.
But yeah, so the prioritize your sanity is such a great stepping stone. I would assume. I've never been a part of the
I
further
mean,
along.
I don't think of, so Prioritize Your Sanity is $10 a month. And then we have two other programs that are more expensive. I don't necessarily think of it as a stepping stone. I think of it as a great spot for certain people, and other people need a different type of support. Like I know that sales wise, it's not the best way for me to think about this. Is like we're always, as a business owner, we're always supposed to be pulling people through and getting them to pay more and all that stuff. And which I really despise that whole attitude, because I feel like if the $10 a month program is what you need, then that's like awesome. Stay there for a long time. Like I don't, like there is no expectation on my end that you're gonna like step up unless you need to. Then yes, like let's, but I mean, I think that you're a perfect example, MaryMargaret. You've been in that program for 3 years now, and you've had tremendous success.
I really have. I really have. It is. I just, again, the community, the accountability in the community are exactly what I need. And when I find myself looking around my house and seeing piles here, piles there, it kind of reminds me like, oh, you know what? I need my crew. Got to
Yeah.
get my crew on board here. And
My
I'll
clutter buddies.
often,
Where are my clutter buddies?
yes, exactly. And I'll take a couple of pictures of piles that I need to deal with, post them, and that's that accountability. You know what? By the end of the day, I need that pile taken care of. And it is perfect for me. I appreciate it so very much.
All right, so we'll wrap up with one last question. What is your best piece of advice to somebody who is starting out or stuck right now?
Start. um,
START. Actually, I think I can put that on the bottom scrolling here.
yeah, I mean, you are never going to get any better if what you're doing is the same thing you've always done. So if for whatever reason you're uncomfortable, you're unhappy, you're, frustrated, all those negative things, try something different, right?
Yeah.
Start doing something different. And it doesn't matter. I think we all, or I know myself, I'm looking for perfection oftentimes. What is the right thing for me to do right now that will improve da 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 da? And that's really not a good way to look at it. It doesn't have to be perfect.
And it
It
never
needs to,
will be. And
nope.
like that's a great thing to declutter right off the bat. The idea that something will ever be perfect. It will never be perfect.
Oftentimes in the marathons or in the boot camps, I'll hear someone who has just started and they're like, now, how should I, start this project? What if I don't do this right? Or, whatever. And I can hear in their minds, I'm going to do this wrong. I've done this wrong 100,000 times and I'm so afraid of doing it wrong. So what?
Yeah, exactly. Failure is feedback. Do it wrong,
Yeah.
you learn more.
It's growth. Every time you make a mistake, every time you try something and that didn't work, now, hey, that doesn't work right now. Let's try this. And maybe someday that thing will work when you're in a better space.
Yeah.
I'm being really abstract, but I think that's,
No, it's such good advice. Start. Just try something. Don't worry about the outcome. Like we're
yeah,
very outcome oriented, but
yeah,
really it's about progress.
right. And I think when people sign up for these boot camps or classes or workshops or any of those, they expect to be told this is what you need to do. Like, go pick up that paper. You don't need that. Put it in the garbage. Go take 10 things out of your closet. And those things may help some people, but maybe that's not going to be the way you work. We can give suggestions but just trying the things that are mentioned and see what works. Throw things at the wall and something will stick.
People do want a very set, like, standard directions. What do I do first? And that's I think something I've had to overcome as a coach is that I'm not going to tell you what to do first. You need to figure that out yourself, because I don't live your life. I'm not in your head. I don't know what's going on today, right? I'm not in your house. You need to figure that out. I'm going to give you help figuring it out, but I'm not going to tell you.
Right.
But that's where the empowerment starts, is that you actually can figure this out. You can make these decisions. You can move forward.
And I think maybe that's why it took me so long to get started, because I have had that perfectionist mindset.
Well,
why aren't you telling me what to do?
That's education, right? That's how we are raised. That's the school system. Sit here for 45 minutes, do this worksheet, take this exam, start with the equation here. That is how we have been taught for our whole entire life. So it makes sense that it's uncomfortable to hear something different.
Yeah. And I love when we are in those coaching calls and someone kind of comes up with that thought of how do I start? What do I do? Oftentimes the coach will say, reach your hand out. Is there, something next to you? Pick it up, make a decision about that. And, just touch and tackle.
Yep.
And I think that's fantastic advice, because we are so paralyzed sometimes because we want to see a huge impact. But sometimes it's just get started.
Right. And the biggest impacts will come from the motion of starting.
Yes.
But we
And
don't
that's
do that in the beginning.
What is the saying you had? Something about motivation comes from action.
Yeah. So motivation likes to take vacations, right? So we cannot rely on motivation. We have to take action.
Right. And once you have action, it motivates you to continue.
Yes. Action breeds motivation. Totally.
That's it. And so
right. You can't
that's why
motivation.
That's why that start, touch and tackle is such a fantastic beginner, because then you're motivated. Oh, wow, I just made a decision. I can make another one.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And ironically, when you put things off, you are making the decision to put things off, but it doesn't feel like a decision. So you're always making decisions,
right?
But it when you decide not to do something, it feels like you didn't actually decide, or you decide not to handle something. You made a decision not to do it, but you don't recognize that as a decision.
Exactly. It's a non-decision.
Non-decision.
Exactly.
MaryMargaret, I so appreciate you taking the time to share your story with us and your advice with us. It's all spot on. On the bottom of the screen, it says start. So if you still need a word of the year, you can actually start today with a word of the year. You don't have to wait until January 1st. Start now. Be like MaryMargaret and start now.
Only take the good parts of me, though. Seriously.
Thank you so, so, so much for this Friday morning experience with us. And thank you for all your support of everyone in our communities, and for supporting my programs for so long, and just being an all around awesome person.
Thank you, Jess. And I know I speak for everyone in our community that we are so thankful that you started this whole mess.
Start.
I'm telling you, I use that word constantly now.
Just start.
But thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your Friday, MaryMargaret, and everyone who is in here. And yeah, have a great week, everyone.
You too.
Bye.